Hey everybody, this is Raul for Bass Musician Magazine, and today we have the extraordinary honor and pleasure of chatting with Jojo Garza from Los Lonely Boys. Jojo, it's so great. I've been listening to your music for such a decades now, and enjoying it and feeling, I think, the general sense of happiness and hope every time your tunes come up. So it's very exciting to have this chance to chat, but we always like to go to the past. How did you get started on music and particularly on bass?
Well, first I want to say thank you, Raul, for having me, and thank you for being any slightly interested to even just chat with me, man. It's an honor myself, to be able to chat with you guys and spread this news about not only what I do as a bass player, but as for Los Lonely Boys as well. And so for me, the way it started is both of my parents were very musically inclined. Both sides of the family were my dad had a band with his brothers called Lupe Garza y Los Falcones,
Mhm.
and my mom's side of the family, her dad and brothers also had a band called Los Hermanos Villanueva. And my mom, she didn't play any instruments, but she was a fantastic singer and as well as a dancer too. And so she wasn't like professionally trained dancer or singer, but brother, I'm telling you right now, she's the big one of the biggest reasons that we were able to grasp hold of what harmony meant
Mhm.
because we saw that from her. Anyway, so my dad and his brothers, they played conjunto music, and my mom's side of the family, it was all conjunto music as well. There was a time in our dad's life where he wanted to change things up. Man, he got into this whole like wanting to be like doing Americans or American style music, rock and roll. He was into Elvis and the Beatles and all that stuff. But he also got into like Ronnie Millsap and Willie Nelson and Waylon Jennings and things. And so music went. By the time I had gotten here, we had already Henry had already been here. I got a sister before Henry, then another sister. And by the time I got here in 1980, they were already singing and Henry was already playing.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, from what I know, the story is that he wrote his first song when he was like 4 years old. And it was just a really simple one note little thing. And so when I got here, the way it's told to us is that we really didn't have much of a choice, or not that we would have making any other choice or taken any other choice, but it was as normal as eating and drinking water, man. Music in our household was part of everyday living. And so for me, basically, man, I had learned to play a little bit of guitar growing up, the basic chords and things like that.
Mhm.
Learned how to do like what you say from Ray Charles, going down, 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 go down, 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 go down, and learned a little bit about the La Música Mexicana as well, and the bass things of that. For some reason, I feel like even though I had learned guitar, piano, and drums before I played bass, I as we're talking about it now, I remember recognizing the bass
Mm.
in the songs. But I think that's also because one of my mom's brothers, his name is Israel Villanueva, but he went by Speedy. He was one of the founders of, I don't know if you remember the big Tejano band called La Mafia. And so he was one of the founding fathers or members of that group as well. And so he was huge in Tejano music, and he was a bass player. And it seems like that I'm thinking about it, it was something that I just always recognized the low notes, man.
Yeah.
But it didn't happen until I was around 9 years old. What had happened is our parents split up, and I went to live with my mom in Amarillo. Ringo had been living with her. Ringo is, of course, our drummer.
Mhm.
And he and I swapped places. He came with my dad, and I went with our mom. And she bought me a classical guitar there because she knew I had already been playing. And she was like, "Hey, Mijo, look what I got you."
Yeah.
And so I was still playing guitar then. But what had happened is when I left, Henry and I had taught each other to play the drums and some keyboard and things like that. And of course, he was playing the guitar all the time. But when I left, Ringo went with Henry and he taught Ringo to play the drums, right?
Mhm.
And so I didn't really know a lot of this was going on, man. I was just over there with my mom. But then we came back, and I mean, it was very different, man, at the time because somos pobres. We were pobres too, man. We
Yeah.
didn't have a lot of things or anything like that, man. It was our family was we were rich in love and familiahood,
Mhm.
And so I remember getting off of the Greyhound bus with my mom and sister, and I saw my dad and my brothers, and they looked like they were all like real clean, and they had like, it looked like they had new clothes on and stuff, you know, so they looked really like, you know, really like sparkling and
Yeah.
everything. And of course, they were, you know, they were still, you know, we were still poor and everything, but they had started playing shows at a, you know, at this like little bars and stuff that our dad found.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, where'd y'all get all this new clothes and stuff? And they were like, well, we've been playing and making a little bit of you know, daddy's been buying, giving us a little bit of money to buy a couple things, you know. And I was like, what are y'all, what's going on? And they were like, we're playing music in a band.
Yeah.
It's us and daddy. And I was like, wow. So I kind of went like, okay, well, what's going on? They took me to the place that they played.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I'd probably be sitting here for 5 minutes trying to remember the name of the place, but they took me there and they had a PA system, a small PA system, and the drum set up and everything, right? And I saw Ringo playing the drums, and I was like, hey, I'm supposed to play the drums because that's what I was playing when I left.
Yeah.
And they were like, no, look at Ringo play the drums now. He was
Yeah.
so little, he was hitting the drums under the cymbals. Yeah, that's how he played, man.
Yeah.
And of course, our dad was fronting the band, and I sat there and watched for one of the very first times. I wasn't part of the band yet,
Mm.
but we went home that evening, and my dad had an old Fender Bassman, and he had an extra guitar, and so he took off two of the strings. This is how it happened for me, brother.
Yeah.
He took off two strings, tuned it an octave lower, turned all the treble off the amp, all the bass up, and said, "You're a bass player." And I was like, "This is not a bass; it's a guitar." And he was like, "This is your first bass." It was like an old Batwing Epiphone.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and it was four strings, and there it was, man. My dad fronted the band with his rhythm guitar. Henry played the guitar, you know, a lead guitar. Ringo played the drums, and they were like, I said, I guess I'm the bass player then.
Nice.
So that's what actually happened, how I became a bass player, man.
Cool. And are you self-taught from there on out? Did you just keep working it out on your own, or?
Yeah, and so remember I told you that I had always noticed things about the bass. It was a lot easier with música mexicana, you know, norteño, but conjunto was our
Mhm.
biggest influence. And so I had learned that on the guitar as a youngster, knowing the dun dun
Yeah.
dun 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 dun, the kind of the box, you know, kind of playing. And so it translated easily to country music,
Yeah.
you know, because they were doing that, a lot of that. And then knowing like the boogie woogie on the guitar,
Mm-hmm.
I just played that on the four-string bass guitar thing.
Yeah.
And so it translated well, man. And so I was definitely taught by our dad, you know, and we all kind of started teaching each other after a while. But yes, at some point, it was all up to me to learn what the bass was really about, man. And I'm telling you, when those days came, I mean, I was taken away, brother.
Yeah.
I had learned about, of course, like I said, my uncle was one of the most amazing bass players I had ever seen. And then my dad and you know, from my dad's side, his brother was a really great Mexican music player. You know, he
Mhm.
wasn't nothing like crazy fancy or nothing, but I could see the solidity in what he did. But the first bass player I actually learned about that was outside of the norm of what I had known was Louis Johnson.
Okay.
And that, what had happened is we had these old they were called betas. They were like little bitty
I remember. Yeah.
remember that?
Yeah.
On and we had got them from like the Salvation Army or Goodwill or
Mm-hmm.
something, and had all these movies and everything. But one of them had this old. I'm sure you probably remember this. It was like an old. There was a bunch of guitarists, drummers, and bass players teaching you how to play.
Mm-hmm.
It was this old like learners kind of thing,
Yeah.
and we didn't actually have an actual learner. It was a video mostly of Albert Lee, the chicken picker.
Mm-hmm.
But there was this one section where it showed Louis Johnson, and it had showed a couple of other bass players. But what Louis Johnson, when I saw this little clip, he was doing his classic. I mean, and I'll get the bass here and show you what the.
Yeah.
It's not on, but I think you'll know what I'm doing. It's the basic.
Uh-huh.
And I had seen that, and I went like, "What is this guy doing?
Yeah.
What is that?" And man, that opened the world. I mean, that just completely opened the world of bass for me. Like, and I know at that time I was probably still around. It hadn't been much, that long. I was probably between 11 and 13, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And I had watched that video over and over and over. And you got to know, back in this day, you had to rewind it,
Yeah.
sit there and hold it, kind of thing, and then watch it again, rewind it again,
Yeah.
and so I did that 1,000 times watching Louis Johnson just. And I was just blown away, man. And so that's when it really all started.
Nice, nice. Well, and one of the kind of interesting things is that because of where you are situated geographically in Texas,
Hmm.
you are kind of on a musical frontier between American music, where you rock and roll and all that stuff, but then you've got all the Mexican music and Latin American, blends and all that
Absolutely.
stuff. And so you guys are in a kind of a category of your own with what, like a Texican rock and roll kind of morphed blend, if you will.
That's exactly what it is.
And it's unique in itself, but also because music is so universal, no matter where you are, we could all enjoy it and go, okay, I'm getting the message, I'm getting the vibe on that. Now, the band, formerly the band Los Lonely Boys, how did that happen?
And so that's what where I was going with the story is I became the bass player, and a little bit of time after that, my dad, we were playing this place up on they had, you go upstairs and there was a restaurant underneath, but they had a little club up top. And I remember there were some local heroes here. There was Tommy Gunn, which was David Tommy, and Bill Peanut Brown, and John Boone was the bass player. They were called Tommy Gunn. And then there was Delbert Snook and the Boogeymen. And the reason I'm bringing these guys up is because they were like our Zeppelins and our, like Yardbirds, or,
Yeah.
or Who and stuff, and we were like, because we were playing country and Mexican and stuff, and trying to play, but we were playing mostly like, I got the rock and ammonia and the boogie woogie blues. And then
Hmm.
we heard some of these guys, they were hitting distortion pedals and they were hitting reverb tanks and they were making these crazy sounds like wow,
Yeah.
wow, wow, and you could hear the bass player turned on a fuzz on his bass player. And I was like, why does his bass sound like that? And so these guys were like big inspirations as well. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because we were playing that place up top of the restaurant. And the guy, Delbert Snook from Delbert Snook and the Boogeyman, I seen him walk in with a old. You remember the custom amps?
Yeah.
He walked in with one of those that's got the padding and all that stuff, and I was sitting there, I'm ready to play the show with my Batwing Epiphone custom bass guitar,
Yeah.
and I see this amp come up, and I go like, that doesn't look like a guitar amp,
No.
and I noticed it had two like 12s in it. And I was just looking at it, eyeing it, going like inside, going like, could that be a bass amp for me? And then all of a sudden, I could tear up thinking about it because I haven't said this story in such a long time. But I remember out of nowhere, he pulled up this Kent bass.
Okay.
And it was a 4-string bass, man. It was like it's like an OP bass,
Yeah.
but it was called a Kent. And I got all ansioso. I was like, what? What? No, 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 no. And I was probably 10 now. It hadn't been that much longer
Yeah.
since we first started playing. And brother, I got so excited. And he walked up with my dad and they handed me the Kent and they said, this is your bass, mijo.
Oh wow.
And I was like, so you can see I kind of getting like choked up
Oh
because I
yeah.
remembering it. Seeing my dad walk up and go, here's a real bass, mijo. This is your first bass, your first real bass.
Nice.
And man, I'm telling you, man, I was like, just, I hadn't seen Lewis yet. Still at this time, I hadn't
Mm-hmm.
seen Lewis or known about him yet. But I just got on it, and I was like, my brother Henry had played a little jazz bass in junior high,
Mm-hmm.
and so he was showing me the slap technique. He was like, "Look at this, bro!" And he played it's joystick from joystick. I'm your joystick,
Okay.
baby. Boom, burr, and he was showing me that, and I was like, "Man, Henry, you're amazing. What are you doing?" So,
Yeah.
I guess if I really got to talk about who showed me the thumb technique
Uh-huh.
first, like that, it was Henry,
Wow.
my brother, and I had no idea. Still, I was going like, "Man, I want to learn to do that pull thing and that thumb thing you're doing." Anyways, man, it was we had a really, I remember that night because, man, I was actually a bass player that night, man.
Wow.
A real bass player, man. And it wasn't long after that that my dad actually said to us, "Okay, if we're going to take this serious, we need to have a name."
Mm-hmm.
We started coming up with the rattlesnakes and the aces and the fire flames or something. And
Yeah.
Ringo, he was está bien chiquillo, Ringo, and he out of nowhere he just goes, "Los Lonely Boys." And I think it's in homage to a song that our dad had written to us for us when we were little. He went, "I'm just a lonely, lonely boy,"
Mm-hmm.
and I think Ringo had inside him, and he went, "The Lonely Boys." And then my dad went, "Los Lonely Boys."
Mm-hmm.
And that was it. Los Lonely Boys were born, man.
Nice, nice.
Yeah,
Well, and in the name itself, it says an awful lot about where you're from.
absolutely.
So I mean, it's a perfect name, and there's been so many groups that have had bad names that they had to go. We can't call ourselves that. We need to find something else. We'll fix it. But no, that's perfect. Now, there was when you guys hit the scene, and I know it's been quite some time, especially with Heaven. I think that's when everybody thinks Los Lonely Boys. We all think of Heaven, and so many years ago.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But really exciting. There is a new album after almost 11 years or so. Resurrection
Yeah.
is coming out this August. That's very exciting news. Tell us a little bit about this project.
We'll be back after a quick break.
Face Your Ears is a podcast for musicians of all levels working in their own home studios, eager to bring their creative ideas to life.
Join us as we explore the ins and outs of music creation in an approachable and engaging way.
Each episode features a blend of technical tips, practical advice, and insightful anecdotes, making it both informative and fun.
Listen to the Face Your Ears podcast on your favorite podcast platform today.
Yeah, it's been right around 11 years, 10, 11 years since we put any new music out. Through the entire time, I mean, we had been so busy, man. I mean, we were working, going across the world and around the world, and they told us we were going around it. I don't know if it was straight across or flat or any of those things yet, man. But we were hitting it. And so we were playing at least, almost 300 shows a year. And so during this 10 and 11 years, we never stopped writing.
Mm-hmm.
Music is always there, always coming up with ideas and whatnot. But what really brought on Resurrection, the music as well as the title, and when you look at when it releases and you'll see the cover and all of the things that are, the whole actual thing, is because we got off the road in 2019, right before COVID had hit.
Mm.
Now, for Los Lonely Boys, the type of people we are, not just musically, but we have a lot of faith and we're very spiritual people.
Mm-hmm.
And so we could never have known what was going to happen with COVID or nothing like that, right? But we were pretty much tired in 2019 of October 2019, and we kind of just said, if you look back on some of the interviews and posts and things, you'll read that Jojo walked away and was going to do his own thing, or kind of is because we were all really very, very freaking tired, man.
Gotcha.
And I basically said, which I mean, man, I can't take the credit. I give it all to the creator, but he used one of us to say, all right, this thing's got to come to a halt because it's just going out of whack, you
Yeah.
know. And so we did, and I did say, I said, okay, guys, I love you. We all love each other, but it's time to put this train to a halt. And so just a couple months later, around February, I think, is when they started talking about this COVID thing.
Mm-hmm.
And for us, we had felt like we had received a, a premonition or,
Yeah.
you know, some big thing saying, hey, before it hits, I'm taking y'all off the road, is how we started to view it.
Wow.
And I mean, you know how it was. It hit the world hard. And for musicians, I mean, a lot of people for sure,
Mm-hmm.
but for musicians, no matter what we were going to do,
Yeah.
it was going to stop us. It put everything on just stop. Nobody can play. You can't go to bars. You can't do this. You can't
Yeah.
get on planes, whatever. It was really, really, really crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And so we didn't see each other for probably 3 months or something like that. You know, we took some time away from each other as well. And when we saw each other, of course, we really greeted each other with lots of love. And after all the hugs and kisses, we all started going, listen to this new song, listen to
Yeah.
this new song. And each brother was like, check this out. Look at what I've been doing. Check this out. Check this out. And we just kind of, we weren't even talking about getting back together or nothing like as Los Lonely Boys. But we were just like, man, this music is so good. Everybody was like coming up with these great ideas. And then we started spending some time together in each other's houses again in the little studios that we had. And Henry had actually built Lonelyville Studios while we were off the road.
Wow.
You know, so that's another thing that we didn't really have the time to do all these other things.
Mm-hmm.
So it was good, man. We needed the sabbatical. We needed to go on a rest, man, and be in the rest. And so one of the first songs I remember him bringing to the table was the song "Send More Love."
Mm-hmm.
And I said to him, Henry, this song, you haven't brought a song like this to the table since the song Heaven. I said, this song right here, if you ask me, as you know, not just as his brother, but I was saying as a producer, I said, bro, this is Heaven Part 2. Like, it's huge, man. It's all about what's going on in the world and everything. And, you know, he would pay props about the songs I was writing, the same with Ringo and whatnot. And so we got a call from our manager, Kevin Womack. And he was like, hey, so I hear you guys are talking again and everything. And how would you guys feel about opening for a band called The Who? And so we were like, well, like what? Like, and he was like stadiums and, you know, big arenas and things. And we were like, looked at each other and went like, how could you say no to The Who calling you personally?
Oh, wow.
And asking, would Los Lonely Boys like to play these dates with us? And man, I'm not going to lie to you, brother. We were all a little bit like, the word isn't scared. We were a little bit hesitant. We hadn't really played or nothing in a while, man. And we talked about it and we kind of went like, all right, brothers, how can we say no? This is a great way to come back.
Mm-hmm.
And from that point on, we had been the people that were announcing us on stage. We had them say, get ready for, you know, Los Lonely Boys. This is the resurrection of Los Lonely Boys. Because for us, we were off for 3 years. If you're talking about in like creators time, that's like 3 days.
Yeah.
And so we, you know, who we are and how we feel about those things, we felt like it was it's time to rise.
Mm-hmm.
Whether we wanted to or not. So we took it, man. Got back out there, started doing that, and then we just started going like, okay, you got 10 new songs. I got 10 new songs. Ringo's got 10 new songs. Let's pick 10 only, because then our manager said, okay, Shelter Music wants to do a deal with you guys.
Wow.
Out of nowhere that came to. And so we were like, all right, well, we can get 10 songs together. And so we put these 10 songs together, man, that we really felt represent what Los Lonely Boys have always been about. And the only reason we call it Texican rock and roll, the main reason, is because when we were with Sony Epic, they kept asking us what genre of music we were. Whether we're pop, we're rock, we're, as they would say, Tejano.
Yeah.
And we would say, look, is there not just a music category? Because those Lonely Boys are music.
Mm-hmm.
You can't tell us not to play heavy metal if we want to. You can't tell us not to rap if we want to. You know, if we want to use a big banda sound and tubas, and that's what Los Lonely Boys. They're like, no, you can't really do this. So we said, you know what? You classify us as what you want, but we're going to be called our own. We're creating a new genre of music, and it's Texican rock and roll,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a blend of everything, all the music that has influenced us and inspired us throughout all our time. And so Texican rock and roll was born there too, man. And so, you know, it's been a while, but we're very, very pleased with this record. My brothers gave me the opportunity to sit in the producer chair and to do most of the production on this album.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you listen to it, you'll recognize that the bass sounds the best. I'm just kidding, man. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. And so I thought I took it such a great honor from my brothers to be able to trust me with that, you know. And the engineer that we use, his name is Chris Jolin. He's our engineer now, and he's got his own studio called Opus Audio Labs out of Chicago. We did most of this record via internet.
Okay.
We were using audio movers and Zoom, and this guy, he's kind of a pioneer with what's going on in the engineer portion
Sure.
of it, you know. And so we were able to record a good portion of this album from our own homes. And then when it came down to like the last, I don't know, maybe even the last 5 or 6 songs, I know we did 4 easily through the internet, but the last 5 or 6, we were like, all right, it's time to get together.
Yeah.
Let's get back together. Let's get in Lonelyville and let's all sit there and play and let's do it the way we do it, man. And so we're very, very pleased with this record. We feel like it is a great compliment to what we did with the album before this, which was Revelation.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, when you listen to these songs, man, you can definitely hear what we had always talked about even some time before, but it is even more, you know, prevalent and apparent now that Los Lonely Boys have adapted again. We have evolved, you know, musically, lyrically, sonically.
Mm-hmm.
As well as, you know, you'll read in some of the credits of some of the work I did is also using you know, some of the programming things as well.
Yeah.
And so we're doing all of that, and when you hear songs like Dance With Me, the bass on that song was actually, I played synth and I played bass.
Okay.
And so I'm following every note that I played on the bass with synth, and we got this great sound, man. And all I used was this. I'm gonna see if it can turn around and show you what I use. You see that little Ampeg over there?
I do.
That's what I used for the whole record.
Wow.
And the sounds we got, you'll hear it when you listen to it. They're huge, man.
Nice.
And so we're very pleased with it. And it for us, it just feels like another stepping stone where we can show everybody that Los Lonely Boys are always, as long as we're alive, as long as we're given life in our bones, we're always going to do our best to show what we feel, music,
Mm-hmm.
the gift of music, not just like all the technical stuff that goes on, that technologically advanced music, AI music and things, which
Yeah.
is really cool, don't get me wrong. But we're here to still represent musicians. People call us fossils, they call us whatever, you know, relics, whatever. It you know, for a lot of people, it's not something that they're doing, man. But for Los Lonely Boys, we can embrace the new, but we're always gonna represent the old,
Nice.
you know. And I dare call it old, but let's call it the original.
There we go. There we go. Well, and I'm glad you mentioned the sound and you showed your Ampeg. That's one big part of it. But how else are you getting your sound? What gear are you playing on?
Okay, so live it's a different story, but in the studio, you know, I used a Tobias 6-string as well as the Honer I told you about.
Mm-hmm.
I used to be endorsed with Honer. Most of the gear we're using Neve,
Okay.
but it's when I say Neve, it's the Rupert Neve design.
Yes.
Not, because I'm sure you know that he sold the name of Neve and
Mm-hmm.
all that stuff. And so this is the Rupert Neve design stuff that we're using. All Rupert Neve preamps. And I mean, they built an amazing studio, man, Henry and Chris, over the time that we weren't talking. Right here, I've got, I'm using a Symphony desktop. I use the RNHP precision headphone amp. And I have a 5211 two-channel mic preamp too. That's also RN Rupert Neve. But live is a different thing, man. I'm still using, which is it's sad for me to say because they ain't making it no more. But I still use SWR
Yeah.
because, man, I always played some Ampeg, and I liked them and stuff. But they got a little bit of there was a little bit too much growl in it, and
Mm.
I wanted a little more clarity. I wanted a little more bump with that clarity, but where I could still, you know, show, hey, the bass player's here.
Mm-hmm.
And so my SWRs are the 750s, the 8x8 Megaliiths, and I use 4 of those.
Wow.
Yeah, man. I used to walk on top of the amps,
Oh
man. They were
no.
so and I would jump off and fly into a solo, and
Oh.
things. That's mostly what I'm using live still, man. I use a subwave and a distortion that comes with the SWR.
Nice. Nice.
And so that's what I'm missing. The speakers are Tone Tubby speakers. I believe they're hemp cone. But for the most part, when it comes to axes, man, I'm still using the Honers and the Tobias that my brothers bought me.
Nice. Well, the beauty of it is when you have something that works for you, you don't have to be searching anymore. And
Right.
I'm
That's
sure
right.
you've seen in the bass community, there's a lot of gas, a lot of gear acquisition syndrome, where they're
Oh, yeah.
still searching for the one. And,
Absolutely.
you can fill your whole house and not have the one yet. So,
I hear a lot of guys talk, and I'm not gonna lie. When I was younger, and I was not very good at Spanish, and
mhm.
they would speak Spanish really fast, I'd get like kind of timid and almost embarrassed. When I hear the bass, the bass geeks talking about tech and gear and stuff, I feel like that again. I'm like, oh, I don't speak that language. Yo no speako eso language,
Yeah.
you know. But I've learned to embrace my sound, the gear I use, and so I can talk about that pretty openly, man. Don't get me wrong; it is fun to mess with a lot of different things.
Sure.
Like I said, man, through a lot of those 3 years we were off. I played mostly synth writing and stuff. Just because I still would like to advance, man, and just
Mhm.
show that I love being a bass player. I love singing, but I
Mhm.
want to be able to show people that there's a lot more to this man than meets the eye
There you
or
go.
the ear.
Indeed. Well, and as we look ahead, something to think about. I know you guys, with the album coming up in August, there's tour plans and
Oh
all
yeah,
kinds of stuff in the works. I guess if people want to know, probably the best place to look would be loslonelyboys.com, and they can check out the
absolutely the best
dates.
place. Yep, absolutely the best place. There's also Facebook, I guess, which could kind of be like second place, and then
Mhm.
we're on all the social media platforms, man. We're on what used to be Twitter. I think it's called X now, and
Yeah.
and we're on YouTube, and we're on Instagram, and anything that's out there that's got to do with it. We're definitely got our team with us, man, and they're making sure that Los Lonely Boys are. We're doing everything we can to make sure that people know Los Lonely Boys are still alive, making music. Because one of the things we've heard over the years, even while we were still working, is, "Where have you guys been?"
I know.
And what it really comes down to is who's behind you, pushing you, kind of thing that gets you in the people's ears and their eyes. And
Mhm.
for us, it was like, look, we're still those cats that do it organically. We're still out there playing and meeting the people and signing some autographs and playing the shows, man.
Yeah, nice. Well, and again, you're absolutely right. The way the world has changed from when you were looking at Betamax and record album companies were controlling what got heard where, which again, geographically, that was one of the things I experienced because I lived for a while in Juarez, in El Paso. And we would
Uh-huh.
go across to Juarez and you'd have a whole different set of music
Oh
because the
yeah.
labels that were there were putting out stuff. And then you'd have what was playing on the El Paso side. And then,
Yeah.
everything that we were getting was what was the radio was giving us. And you know how back in the day they play the same song all day long, it'd be every hour you'd hear that same song 3 times.
That's
And
right.
I used to get a favorite song and I'd call in and ask if they'd play it. They never would because it wasn't in the
In
rotation. Yeah.
Right.
So we know you've been around all this time, but resurrection is an exciting thing for all of us. The message of hope
Thank you.
and healing that I find in your music is very welcome, especially after everything that we've been through and the things that we're still going through.
Amen to that, brother, man. Amen to that. One of the things we tell people is the main focus of Los Lonely Boys music or the main message is, it is love. It is,
Mhm.
it is hope. It is healing. It is, we can make it.
Here you
The,
go.
the human spirit is one of the greatest, if not the greatest creations of all creations, man. And he even said it himself, man. We're that expression. And we're the higher, expression with higher thought. And so we try to do that, brother, with everything we do, especially with our music, man.
Nice. Well, Jojo, we appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule. I know you've got so many things going on, but I'm very grateful that you took time to sit down with us. Folks, you've seen him here on Bass Musician Magazine, Jojo Garza.
Thank y'all very much.